Well, hello and welcome to the Frustration to Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Troy Eadie, together with Warren Otter, where we bring some of our friends within the industry to help you overcome some of your frustrations to achieve freedom. So today, what we're going to be looking at is some of the frustrations that you might be having around sales and how you're adjusting to this new economy. So this is why we brought Brad Tonini here today, where we're going to be able to understand what's been happening in his world, what advice he's been giving his clients, and some of the tips and tricks to adjust to this new environment. So welcome, Brad.
Troy, wonderful to be here, and selling has certainly shifted a long way in the last 3 months, my friend. So it'll be great catching up about that today.
Yeah, no, keen to hear all about it. So would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about what it is that you do?
Well, I've been in sales since I was in nappies, really. My dad was a great salesman. I was very lucky. I used to get lessons on sales across the breakfast table in between pasta, Vegemite and jam. So, it was great. I learned about selling. He was in sales for 40 years and used to teach me things like the theatre of the sale, language, the way we get people engaged, face-to-face selling. How we put together a proposal, how we pitch the proposal, all those sorts of things. And I did work with him for a couple of years there in my late teens. He passed away about 10 years ago. And ever since he's passed away, I've been still using some of the lessons that we talked about years ago. And as you know, Troy, I run a Friday school of sales. I have people in my community, the trusted advisor selling community. They come along to a breakfast pretty much once a month as you've come along. And there's a group of anywhere up to about 35 to 40 come along to that. And then there's also people who come along to my webinars and a whole range of things. But I guess I spend most of my time either speaking or training and working with sales teams around the country to transform a sales team into a team of trusted advisors.
Oh, good. Well, so look, I imagine the sales breakfast has changed a little bit since I've been there. How has it changed? How have you innovated yourself?
Well, it's a great point. I mean, I think that it was March the 6th was my last breakfast live. Right. And we had no idea at March 6th that this was going to happen. There was obviously a little bit of rumor around it, but it was not necessarily going to be a hard stop. And since then, we've run virtual breakfasts. So people come in at 8 o'clock in the morning. We run an hour. They bring their own coffee and muffins. And we get stuck into it. And I might put up some ideas for that morning. We'll take questions. We'll get some chat going from the members. And it's been invaluable as people have been going through a really tough journey. How does sales look in March, then April and May, and now, of course, what does it look like now? And we'll talk about that today, I'm guessing.
Yeah. It's good that you mentioned that. So, everyone that's listening live, we do have a bit of a chat box there. So last week we had a lot of really good engagement. So if you've got any questions or you want to get Brad to answer some of your questions more specifically, please put your question in the Q&A box and we will answer those live. So, Brad, can you maybe tell us a bit more of what you've seen more specifically in terms of your clients? So, some of the challenges they've faced and some of the things you help them put in place to help them get through this situation.
Well, I think the first stage to all this was that all my clients were going through what we've been going through, which is assimilation. In other words, how do we get into this? And I hate the idea of this new normal thing, but the whole idea of where we're going to transition to. And sales teams had noticed sometimes a massive drop off in sales. Other sales teams have seen sort of 10 to 15, 20% now, perhaps even up to 30%. And other sales teams, have had no difference whatsoever. I've got a couple of clients in telecommunications. They're doing gangbusters. They're going really well. I've got a client down in Geelong who was in the business of packaging and janitorial materials. And he had 6 weeks of crazy demand around sanitizer and masks and everything else. So, every client's in a different place, Troy. And I think this is really the place I'd love to start because, we can't assume anything. Some salespeople have been doing it really tough from the get-go. Some are entering into a difficult environment. Some are also trying to get their mindset right about what selling looks like. We've been through a phase where it was all about being at service for clients, asking clients, reaching out to them, how are you? How are you going? And we had a period of at least 8 weeks of that where it was sort of rude to be selling in some ways, but you had to be able to relate to people, reach out to them, connect with them. The great part about that, of course, is that people were taking your emails and replying to your phone calls because we're all in it together. There was no hierarchy. It was about the fact we're all going through this phase together. And since then, it's been about this wave of sentiment out there that says, hey, we've got to get back to selling again. We've got to get the economy moving again. We've got to get people buying again. And so salespeople play an active role in making that happen. We've got to get out there and make it happen right now.
Yeah. So what have been some of the things you've been doing? So let's talk about some of the ones, maybe not, like a restaurant that's completely closed, but clients that are maybe doing it a little bit tough, 30, 40% down. What would be the strategy or the plan that would help them put in place so that they can come back out of it?
Well, most of my clients are business to business. So I'd say probably 80%. I've got a few that do retail, but pretty much business to business. And in that circumstance, some of the sales teams have been saying, how do we virtually service? In other words, how do we take orders rather than actually going face to face? So one of the things that's really been great out of all this is that I think we're going to look at this whole virtual servicing of our client base in a whole different way. And I think Zoom, DocuSign to sign documents, and a whole range of other vehicles that we can use are absolutely critical to how businesses will look at that tail in their business. They call it the long tail, whether that's sort of the bottom 20% in terms of the value of a client list. How do you service that? Because it really is costly to go out and service it face to face. So this has been a really nice thing to happen where businesses are going, well, okay, we've had to jump on the phone. We've had to jump on Zoom. We've been having to do account servicing and reviews and also talking about new products and solutions to our clients virtually. We might just sort of keep this going. The other thing is too, that our salespeople have got used to working from home. And that ain't a bad thing either. I mean, I've got clients right now that are actually seriously looking at whether or not they'll keep the offices and premises they've got or whether they can outsource some of that and use, I was doing an interview with Victory Offices this morning, Wendy Dawson over there, and her Victory offices and suites enable you to turn up and just be a member and not have to have infrastructure. I'm seriously looking at whether or not I'd have my office in St Kilda Road as well. I mean, things are changing. So it's about being flexible, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, look, particularly so because Warren and I work with, a lot of clients in the manufacturing industry, and even some of the advice that I've been giving, like I might be a truss manufacturer or a window manufacturer, and the reps are so used to not really having too much accountability, and they're just out on the road, and they might see a couple of builders a day type thing to maintain the relationship. And my advice has always been, let's just pull them in off the road, because you can call probably 50 builders in the one day. But, developing that skill of how to build rapport, how to maintain a relationship, it's almost like that long distance relationship. But so it sounds like from your perspective, it's really kind of pushed a lot of these salespeople, off the road, and then to think about how to sell on the phone and virtually.
Well, I think salespeople are really working at their own mind. How do I become as effective as possible? The sales managers are saying, okay, we can really probably get more productivity in a lot of ways from the salespeople. But there is another part to all this, and that is the mindset and how salespeople are coping, and sales managers are coping with this change in mindset, the ability to keep themselves up, be resilient, not necessarily to be trying to knock down doors all the time, but at least try to keep themselves positive. And one of the questions I posed to a sales team just recently was, how do you answer the question when someone says to you, how's business for you? That's a really interesting moment of truth.
Yeah.
If you want to be absolutely transparent and honest and you go, oh, okay, well, my business is actually down, 40, 50, 60, 70, whatever it is, percent. I think there's got to be a part of that where salespeople are also couching that with a positive statement. And that's really important from a selling point of view, that we are ambassadors for our brand, ambassadors for our company. And so it's like, okay, yes, this is a given. We are down, but we are doing these things that we're finding that are really positive right now. We're innovating, we're upskilling, we're introducing new product lines. So there's got to be a couch statement around how's business, because I think as salespeople, we have to be positive. The mindset has to be switched on. We don't want to be that person who's sort of going, things are tough, because, the people in the marketplace need to get that positivity from us. This is a big part of mindset, I think.
Yeah, Brad, if I can jump in, it's Warren here. I just jump in. That's the point I was going to ask you. And I think it's a really good point you started touching on, because, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but the market seems to needs a level of confidence. And when it feels and senses confidence, it'll have more, belief in actually putting the purchase order book out and start to buy. So it's a very good point you started touching on. If you can expand a bit further about not going out there and saying it's all doom and gloom. If people realise things are happening, they don't want to miss out, and they can start to create that level of confidence that the whole market needs. Is that what you were sort of alluding to?
Well, Warren, you only have to look at the stock market right now. I mean, it's incredible the way the sentiment runs that. I mean, yesterday was a massive gain, today off a little bit. But the point is that when people get confident about what's going on with companies, confident about the fact that these restrictions open up, confident about the fact that we might actually be in stadiums watching the footy at some point, I mean, that's a big part of how the market reacts. What the problem we've got as salespeople and sales managers is, and this stands for business owners who run sales teams as well, is that, you've got to get customers buying again. And one of the things that's really important about that is that if sentiment is up, if they're feeling like things are opening up, that things are looking better, then you as a salesperson play a critical role in getting people thinking that way. And we don't want people pulling on the shutters and saying, hey, I'm not going to buy anything right now, because that ain't going to help anyone. So that positive, that mindset, that ability to be able to certainly look at the positive part of what's going on in their business and the opportunities attached to that. One of the things I said to a sales team yesterday was actually the fact that there could be a ton of opportunities that might be out there right now. And as things open up, who knows? You don't know, and I hate to say it, but you don't know what situation your competitor's in. Different people are leveraged at a different level. So that actually does create opportunities.
No, good stuff. I totally agree with you. Yeah.
If you're thinking about opportunities right now, if you're just keeping close to your customers, ringing up the people that you've done previous quotes for and proposals for, people you've been courting and nurturing, that contact level should be really high. It should be really intense. It's not about pushing people to buy. It's just saying g'day and keeping in contact with them and finding out what's on their mind and what sort of solution you can build. Because what might come out of that, Warren, is simply that you may get someone say, well, we've actually got a problem right now. Our current supplier is not necessarily supplying this, or their salesperson is no longer around, or there may be an opening. So, don't close yourself off to the fact that this is actually a land of opportunity. I think it was it Warren Buffett that said that more millionaires are made in recessions than any other time?
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And I always found in the past, and what you were saying there is, in these times, the companies and the sales teams that aren't as strong, they normally come back to the office with the excuse of, oh, it's quiet out there, we just accept it. Yet the ones who push harder and harder and harder are the ones who actually get the rewards.
Yeah, I think that Troy made a really good point before, which goes to your point, and that is that, sales teams can get flabby. The sales function inside a business can get very flabby. In other words, we deal with current clients, they keep buying, we turn up, we do our sales calls, and really what it is a turn up and suck up call. At the end of the day, it's not actually any value attached to it in terms of adding value to the transaction. It's about, hey, I'm here. Hello, Mr. Client, can I get my order again? So, we have to really push and say to our salespeople right now, how are we adding value? What are we doing that's different to what we normally do? How are we actually talking to our clients in a different way? How are we thinking? I think Troy made a really good point before about process. One of the things I'm really encouraging all my clients to do is to go through your processes, evaluate your sales process, evaluate your value proposition. I have a process that I go through with all my clients called a strategic message of uniqueness. And that's, it's like a value proposition on steroids. And what it basically does is it says, out of all the vendors available to you right now, why should you buy from me? And we structure up a whole statement and a go through, and you can use it in sound bites in the meeting, so it doesn't look like it's too rote learned. But the great part about that is that that's a process we've got to get down pat. And maybe up till now, those processes have just got a little slack. So, this is an opportunity to really refine and sculpture our processes.
And so how would you recommend a business goes about that, Brad?
In terms of developing a proposition to market and a message of uniqueness?
Yeah, like do you get the team together and do a bit of a brainstorming on the whiteboard, or what's the normal process you'd get a team to go through? Get the sales guys motivated, get them thinking in the right space, get them that winning attitude.
It's a great question, Troy. I essentially what I do, and I do this in obviously a lot of my retreats, half days and full day workshops, but what I'm actually getting them to do is I'm getting them to think about what they believe are the things that they have as a unique advantage over the competition. Now, are there a multiple number of things that you and business have as a competitive advantage of your competitors? You may only have one or two, but a message of uniqueness to market is actually a combination of three main pillars, and we build behind that language and evidence statements to support it. So if I look at what I do, I'll give you an example. If I go into a new client who's looking at hiring my services, they might say, okay, so why you as a sales coach, presenter, consultant, trusted advisor should I be buying from you? And they may not necessarily say it that way, but that's the inference of the conversation. I have an opportunity now. I should have that mentally rehearsed and planned in my mind, but come across in a very conversational way. So one of the things I might do is to say, well, that's a great question. It's a question I do get asked quite a bit. If I had to think about it, and what I'm using really is a little bit of theatre, a little bit of pause in what I'm doing, even though I've rehearsed and trained to give this statement many times over. One of the things that if I had to think about it would be that I'm a solo practitioner in the market. I don't have coaches and consultants. When you hire me, you get me. Another reason why you might want to hire my services is I customize all my work. So I'm really giving them these sound bites that I have written, rehearsed, trained myself in, but it looks very conversational, and you can put them in all the way through the conversation, not just in one statement that looks like it's something you just thought of. And then what I'll do from there, Troy, is that when I'm working with a team, I'll say, okay, you come up with these statements. Let's now drill and rehearse this. Let's role play it. And then the moment of truth is the next part of the process. I tell them to forget everything we just talked about. Go out now and talk to your clients. Ask them. And the way we ask them is a segue such as this. Bill, wonderful to catch up today. I'm doing some work on my website right now, or I've been charged with responsibility to write some copy on my website right now from the sales manager. What I'd love to know from you is, can I just ask you a question? What is it that you really find valuable in buying from me and from our company? What do you really value? Now, when you ask that question, you will find a client will usually give you some gold. I asked that question of a client many years ago, and I thought they were going to talk about sales process, modules, my coaching program. And the person just said to me, this is going back 14 years ago. He said to me, right. Oh, that's very simple. You're my trusted advisor. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, you're the guy I can trust. You're my sounding board to my business. I said, so guess what, Troy? All my branding changed overnight. From sales strategist and $1 million selling into trusted advisor selling. Why? Because my clients are telling me that. So that's the last part of the process. We go to market, we ask the clients, we get the feedback, We then come together, we brainstorm, we put these things up on the board and we say, this is what our clients are saying. It doesn't matter what we say, this is what they find valuable.
Yeah. And look, I'm a big fan, we're systems people. So I'm a big fan of having a script, or we might call them word tracks now because people don't like talking about scripts. But, if you have some word tracks down pat on how you're going to open the conversation, maybe some of the center of the conversation, how you're going to close the conversation and kind of who you are and what you do, you can really unify the whole business around those word tracks. And then, it's up to you to add that bit of theater or your personality to the way you present yourself. But I think I really liked that. It was like it's a good way to unify everyone around the new approach. It's good.
Well, as a trusted advisor, we've got to be able to be on our game, on our A game right from the start. And some salespeople, I go out and coach in the field, Troy, I see them in the field, and some people have got zero preparation at all. They just turn up to the sales call and they wing it. And I'm very big on preparing, very big on, like you said, word tracks, and how you're going to segue into the conversation. So let me give you another little piece that I might use. If I'm talking to a salesperson out in the field and I say, okay, how are you going to start the conversation? And they're not giving me anything. I've seen salespeople say to a buyer, what keeps you awake at night? Well, I got to tell you, that's been done to death. I mean, if I hear another person come and see me and say, what keeps you up at night, I think I'll just, I'll lose it. So what I say to salespeople is I say, you've got to create a segue. Now, the best segue I've ever used, and I'm happy to handball this and give this to anyone who's watching, is that I will go into a meeting and I would have done the prep. I would have been to their website. I would have looked up their LinkedIn profile. I would have come up with some things that are common things to talk about. And that's going to take you about 7.5 minutes. That's how long it takes these, because the information's everywhere. So you get those little bits of information. And then the way I segue, Troy, couldn't help but notice the other night when I was on your website that now it doesn't matter what you say after that, because the keywords are when I was on your website the other night. What are they thinking? You've done some work. You were doing it out of hours. What did you find out? You know what the most common answer to that is when you pitch that to a new prospect? They will look at you and they'll say, geez, we're looking it up on the website. What did you think of it? Is that you're quite right. Word tracks and scripting and all that sort of thing in terms of what we're going to say is the language of the sale. And the language of the sale is a great part of theatre. What we need to do is we need to prepare some of that in advance and be ready to go. And this is new selling if you haven't been doing it before. This is absolute bottom line requirement now.
Yeah. And look, I see people, people come to me, they'll probably come to you and they just want more leads, more opportunities. And what I love about what you're saying is to me, it's less about how many leads you have and what you're doing with those leads. Slow down, give a better quality result to that client. Ask more questions. What are they really wanting this for? What's the purpose of it? When do they need it by? What's the budget? Take some time, understand them, their needs, and then be able to tailor that to them rather than how do we get more leads? How do we get the quotes, get them out as quick as possible? So it sounds like, in this environment, we have less leads. So, it's what are we doing with those?
Well, I think salespeople, always like to be busy. They always like to feel it. They've got plenty of activity. I mean, we talk about activity multiplied by effectiveness equals results. So, if you've got lots of activity, it makes you feel better. You can go to your sales manager or business owner and say, hey, I did 5 calls. I've got 3 quotes. But at the end of the day, if you're looking at from a business owner point of view, you've got to really evaluate your salespeople and people who are, account managers and say, what are they doing that's actually adding value here? And what's the conversion rate? One of the things I think I saw probably, 20 years ago, and let's face it, it's still happening out there all the time, is that so many people are posting and advertising about, make money in your jammies. In other words, you can not have to leave the bedroom and just put it on autopilot and all these leads will spit out your system and you'll just close them all out. I got to tell you, there's a lot of BS out there about this. I mean, it's about conversion. It's about the conversation you're having. And if you're prepared, if you've done some work in advance, why do you want to go and do 20 sales calls to convert it at 10% when you can do 10 sales calls and convert at 40%? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. Why not lower the labor intensity and get a better result for the efforts?
Yeah, be more targeted around who you're actually going to target, understand them better, and spend more quality time with them.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of people talking about this, Troy, to be honest with you. I mean, I've been making my living out of this for the last 15 years with the Trusted Advisor Selling Institute, but there's not a lot of people talking about it. I see a lot of people talking about leads, you're right, whether it's SEO stuff. I mean, I'm getting emails all the time from overseas. You know, get people who are doing telemarketing out there. Lots of people that can help you there, but how about the actual moment of truth when you're there to convert the business, when you're there to listen to the buyer, when you're there to create a fabric of the sale, the fabric of the sales call. That to me is far more important, because if you've got less leads, as you just said, you can still create, certain numbers of new sales in the market.
Yeah. Yeah. And, a lot of people forget about, doing a really good job and then asking for the referral. We'd started working with some mortgage brokers only just at the start of this month. And, they're really caring bunch of guys and ladies. And, but they're not quite asking for that referral. And so, as you start to ask the referral, you've then got to do a really good job so that when you do ask for it, it's not awkward. and so it really just kind of resets the mindset. How do you do a really good job up front? Because you're going to ask for a referral and you want them to actually feel comfortable to give you that referral. And if you do all of these things, have your word tracks, have your methodology down, do a great job, study them like what you're saying, and then get the referral, you may not need any of these leads.
Well, the Aussie culture is an interesting one. I think that we actually feel really pushy about asking for referrals and introductions. We've got a real thing about it. And my big thing in Trust and Advisor selling is about collaboration, strategic alliances, introductions and referrals. And pretty much that's the way I've got my business, 80, 90% of my business for the last 15 years. And I think that anyone who's good at what they do will absolutely see the value of referrals. And it does start in doing a great job. Once you do a great job, you can be asking for them at any time in that journey that you feel the person is really looking for a deeper relationship, or when you can prove value. So what I'm in the business of doing is that anytime that I'm talking with a client and they are getting a really nice feeling about the work we're doing together, that is when the door's ajar. And that's when we ask for referrals. Now, traditionally, salespeople will ask for referrals at the end every time. You don't need to do that. You can ask for referrals anytime you like. I've had people give me referrals who didn't even use me. They actually just liked the experience and the conversation we had. So, referrals are the most underdone way of developing business. And it's because we don't like doing it because we feel pushy. It's because we've never been shown how to. And it's because we don't have any language attached to how we go to market with it. But this is going to be the big thing in the next 6, 12, 18 months, that if you can't ask for referrals and introduction, you are in real trouble, because this is the way we're going to actually develop new business.
So can you share with us, what are some of your word tracks around this to be able to ask for a referral?
Well, one of the things I always do is I pose the question to a buyer, and I call all customers and prospect buyers. It's my thing. But whether we talk about customers, prospects, buyers, I always pose the question: are you happy with what I've been doing? Are you seeing the value of what we're doing? Are we meeting the outcomes we set at the start of the project? So I'm trying to get that yes. Now, if I can get a yes at that point, then I know that the door is now ajar for me to start working into a conversation about introductions. So I will then try to go for the gold standard. Now, the gold standard is an introduction, not a referral. I don't want a name and a number. I want an introduction where someone picks the phone up and introduces me, or does that email handshake where they email the person and put me into the CC, and they say, you know, Brad's done this for us, whatever else, and he'd love to have an opportunity to chat to you. You should really use your services. So I'm looking for that opportunity, that door to say, hey, you happy with what we're doing? And then as soon as I get that, I will then segue into some language that goes something like this. You know, thank you. I'm glad that we're obviously meeting the outcomes we first talked about. You know, one of the things I've been thinking about is that you and I both deal in a similar market. You and I both have clients in a similar market. It'd be great if we could actually develop a relationship together where we could cross refer, or we could help introduce people to each other. I couldn't help but notice that you have a relationship with, and you state in the blank, whoever it is, or whatever organization it is. I would love an introduction into that organization. Would that be possible? Now, that is not pushy. That is not, saying to people, please give me 5 names and numbers like they used to do in insurance sales. It's just a conversation we're having. It's just a natural progression. Now, I'll give you one quick example. I'm down in Geelong. I'm seeing a client where we're talking about the things we're doing together. We're getting towards the end of the project. And I wanted to get a relationship with the Geelong Chamber of Commerce. This is going back a number of years ago. And the person I'm dealing with, Rob, a great client, and he says, really enjoying what we're doing together. I said, Rob, I'd love to get introduction to the Geelong Chamber of Commerce. I know that you do a lot of work with them. Now, Rob was a gold member. In other words, he was paying the Geelong Chamber some money. Well, do you think they might pick the phone up when Rob rings? Absolutely. So Rob says, hey, I've got this guy here, Brad, he's been working with us, da-da-da. And the lady at the Geelong Chamber said, hey, why don't you just come around now, come and have a cup of tea? So I'm sitting in front of the person I want to deal with, the chief executive of the Geelong Chamber, inside 15 minutes, because Rob had basically opened the door for me, and he takes me around in his car and off we go. So this is not difficult, but it takes a new way of thinking. It changed the mindset in terms of how we develop good collaboration and great alliances.
Yeah. Look, because what I'm getting is just how important it is to be prepared. You know, prepare yourself for the meeting, both who are you talking to, what's important to them, also for yourself. What are your word tracks? What's the systems you're following? When are you going to ask questions to check in and get some feedback, and then ask for a potential introduction? And I like that word much better, as opposed to ask for a referral. Like, an introduction is the actual act of referring. So it's quite natural. So it's almost, it's in the devil's in the detail, isn't it? Like, the more detail you go into your sales process, your word tracks, your system, and then the more you rehearse it and practice it, the more natural it'll be, the better conversions you get, and so forth.
You know, we talk about word tracks and we talk about the language of the sale, and that's all very important. But the other thing that goes side by side with that is the confidence to pull it off. The confidence to feel as if you can ask that question. I've been with salespeople over the years that have just made me go, wow. I sit there beside them and I go, wow, these people, I'm thinking of someone in particular, but people that I've noticed over the years who have been so good at asking for business. And I go, wow, I'm learning something from you today as I'm coaching you. And I see the way that some people can ask for referrals. I'll tell you what, one guy I went out with many, many years ago in the telecommunications business. He actually said in the first meeting, he didn't even know the person. He said in the first meeting, he said, and should we do business together, be rest assured, I'll be back here asking you for introductions into people that you do business with, because that's the way I develop all my business. And I'm sitting there going, can you do that? Can you ask that question? And I got to tell you, the answer is yes. The person just laughed and went, God, you're a good salesman. Boy. Yeah, okay. Well, if you give me the right product, the right price, of course I'll give you introductions. So it's confidence too.
Yeah, I love it, because, the question, I normally get, particularly now, is, how can you help me open up some doors right now? But, potentially the doors are already in your network. It's, instead of thinking, because I was just had a strategy session with a potential client earlier today. They manufacture like envelopes, very specific, tailor-made envelopes with the drawstring and everything on them. And, he was like, look, for 25 odd years, we've never done marketing. The website's an absolute atrocious. And I just want some advice. What are the young people doing these days? And he wanted advice on social media. He wants to do his new website and everything. And I was like, well, hang on. So how's your business going? How's it been through this situation? And so the business has been strong and it's been going well and it's been growing from referrals. So why would you change that? And I was like, yeah,
I'm guessing your experience is the same as mine, that when you ever ask one of your clients, how do you get business? I bet they say by word of mouth, which is actually introductions and referrals.
So isn't the best marketing strategy to deploy something like what you're saying? Instead of doing something on social media, shouldn't you deploy some word tracks, maybe a system, do some training on making sure your whole team can ask for more introductions?
Yeah, it's a great point, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about social media. Social media to me is connecting. It's the first introduction. It's trying to create something in common. If you're using the product like Sales Navigator, you can get into the industries and get into the sort of profile of what you're looking for, which is great. But that's only the start. That's just a connection. And let's face it, if you've got someone who's got a great client, who's been buying from you for years, who really sees you as being that sounding board or trusted advisor, that is worth 20, 30, 50, 100, 500 connections. So it's about quality of the relationship, isn't it?
Yeah. So look, Brad, I'm just looking at the time. We're getting close. We've got about 10 minutes left. Is there anything that's on your mind or anything you want to be able to communicate to the audience that's listening that is wanting to, ramp up the sales machine to grow at the moment? Anything else worth mentioning?
Well, I think we're in an environment which I call new selling. Now, is new selling everything brand new? No, it's a reinvention of some of the old. And under that umbrella of new selling, I think there are a few strategies that I'd be recommending to anyone who's looking at sort of cranking up the sales machine again after being in hibernation. Number one is you've got to engage your team and sort of go, okay, what is our strategy moving forward? How can we be strategic and tactical about who we're going to go and talk to? How we're going to virtually service some of the accounts we've got? How do we connect? What are some of the things we're doing in social media? There's a whole game plan you need to create through transparency and just real good, honest communication with your team, because no sales manager or business owner that I've met in the last 3 months has all the answers. No one does. So it's like, okay, how do we start there? Yeah. From there, we start talking about, if we do get face-to-face with someone, how that face-to-face appointment is like a moment of truth, a golden moment of truth. Guys, how are we going to prepare for that? Yeah. How are we going to get our process right? How are we going to get our language right? How are we going to, talk about the different solutions we've got? How can we role play and rehearse that inside the office to make sure that we're coming across in the most effective way? Yeah. So that's a couple of things. One we talked about today. Number 3, if you like, is message of uniqueness and getting clear on your differentiation, getting clear on what you do and how you do it and how it's different from anyone else. Number 4, prolific and provocative in your content posting. There's no point in just being, vanilla out there. You need to be Neapolitan. What are you putting out there that is showing you with a happy client, or you talking about what you've done for someone? In other words, being purposeful with your posting, because people are all posting. So it's like, okay, how do we do something different out there from a posting point of view? Yeah. So there's a lot of things we can be doing right now, and I think we're reevaluating our processes and building new tools, sharpening the saw, and getting better at what we do.
Yeah, I like that. Sometimes I see sales meeting. Sometimes people start sales meetings and then they stop them, and I typically find because they start the sales meeting all with the purpose of talking about the KPIs. So how many of this? How many of this? How many of this? This is what's wrong. You need to get this up. Do more. But, I like to say, well, you should get the KPIs the night before. And before you even come to the meeting, you should already know what the numbers are. So, and then based on what you're saying, you're better off using that meeting to do the role plays, to practice, rehearse, you do some digging around who it is you're going to target. Who do you really want as that new client? And who might be able to give you the introduction?
Troy, I wish I had $1 for every time I've been sitting in the back of a sales meeting and they've talked about sales figures for last week, the month, the year, and it's taken up 60% of the sales meeting, and the other 40% has been on the stock that they need to move. There's no conversation around strategy or tactics. I can tell you right now, the refreshing sales managers are those that say, we'll do some of this online, we'll do some of this in the reporting, I'll attach some reports, but can we actually have a percentage of what we're talking about, our brainstorming new ideas and how we go to market? So you're right. I mean, I see it all the time in terms of how sales meetings are run.
Yeah, great. And so, Warren, as we come close to the end of the session, is there any other last questions that you have?
Oh, it's not so much a question, but I've been really intrigued by this whole COVID close down. I say close down in regards to people being able to get out. And there's a lot of chat early on about training people and spending time to actually train people. But I'm just wondering how many people really went in and upskilled and trained their sales team, which is the leading edge going out to market. How have you seen that, Brad? Has there been a real upturning, people turning to training of salespeople?
The first 6 or 7 weeks, I got bits of coaching sort of work. In other words, a lot of one-to-one sort of coaching work, people just going through a lot of change in their head. I do a lot of work with sales managers around the country too and overseas, and I was dealing with a lot of those one-on-one calls as well. So probably, weekly coaching calls. And then after that sort of 6 weeks, 8 weeks, I started to see a shift where people are saying, hey, we need to get all the guys engaged. And so I've been doing a lot of virtual conversations, being patched into a sales meeting, doing 1-hour presentations on a particular thing, or getting feedback and having a conversation with the sales team. So there's been a lot of that. And now there's definitely a wave of, okay, how are we going to get clear on our strategy? How are we going to get clear on making this stuff happen? And I think it's only just been the last week that I've actually had people saying, let's now schedule for, say, August, September, and start to put some dates in the diary. Now, even if they get postponed for any reason, I mean, that stuff can happen. But, they're starting to think about that now, August, September, and saying, let's get the guys to get in the room. So I have seen a change, a shift as we've been going along in the last 3 months.
I think it's great because what I've been seeing around the place is a lot of people say, well, just get out there and sell more. We need you to sell more. But it's that definition of insanity. If you keep doing it the same way, you're going to get the same results. So it is a great opportunity to bring in some new techniques and learn. So it's been some great insights.
Yeah, I think salespeople haven't been in the mindset to go down there and knock down doors, and that's fair enough. And I don't believe that buyers in the market have been wanting to hear a really strong sales message up until about now. So, it's fair that the people have been really confused as to how to go about it. But my message out there right now is crank up that machine. Let's get going because we've got a job to do to get out there and start seeing people and make things happen. We've got to get the economy spending again. Yeah.
So, Brad, I didn't ask you this before, so I'm putting you on the spot. But do you have something you can give the audience to? I think you have a book, or do you have some tips or tricks? So, because after this, we'll give everyone the opportunity to get a recording of this, and potentially the opportunity to lean in or get to know you a little bit more. Is there some material or something you'd like to give away?
Well, the great thing about what's been going on the last 3 months, it's given me a really good opportunity about sort of every Friday. I've been putting time aside to write books and write articles and ebooks and special reports. Wow. So I've got 3 that are sitting there ready to go. Okay. So if they'd like to get the 3 ebooks, one is on speed being a competitive advantage. I believe that speed to market is really a big part of how we get competitive advantage. The second one is the 17 ways in which we can be a trusted advisor in the market and not just a salesperson. And the third one is all about the likability factor. In other words, how do we develop that magnetic personality and the language and the theatre of the sale to be able to get clients? So I'd be more than happy to make those 3 ebooks, those special reports, available to any of the listeners or viewers.
Yeah, it was a safe bet. I knew you'd have some kind of content or something.
Well done.
Email me, brad@tonini.com. There you go.
Yeah. Oh, great. Oh, well, look, it's getting close to 1:15 now. So, look, thank you very much. We've answered the questions, and I think it's great. I've even got a lot from it today. I really liked that ask for an introduction piece, and there's some methodologies that kind of leaned in nicely with the way I like to think. So that's always a bonus. Warren, any last?
No, look, I agree. The tips were fantastic, Brad. I wrote down some insights myself. I did like the referral and the style about going around it, so appreciate it. And I'm sure everyone listening would have picked up on 1 or 2 little gold nuggets there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I'm so glad. Well, I believe that selling is it needs to be fun activity, and the other thing is that we are all in the business of selling. Every person is a salesperson.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Warren. Thank you, Brad. And thank you, everyone else, for coming live. We'll see you later.